Hiya. It's been a minute. We're doing these tea times starting in the fall. I think we hit almost every week through the end of the years. And things are seasonal. It's spring. Spring has sprung. So it's been very, very, very busy. And I've been wanting to get on here and talk about so many different things, and also just exchange tips and ideas and stories and connect, because it's been really rad. And we all know the importance of connecting and exchanging ideas and broadening our minds, which usually coincides with some opening of heart. So it's rad. It's cool. If you've never been here before, I'm Lou, and this is Minoraki Pharmacy. It is Moon Day. It is, the 5th or 6th day of April. Spring has sprung. We've celebrated spring equinox. Some folks celebrating Pesach, Passover, and Easter, and rebirth, rejuvenation, Aries season. Time of the wheel when seeds crack open. And I've been thinking, and which isn't really necessarily new, but one of the things that I've been thinking about is our creativity. And you can't schedule it. There's not like, oh, I'm going to be creative right now. There's a lot of ideas about creativity, right? And some of them, I think, right, like hard to schedule, hard to like make creative time. What does creative or being creative mean? What does it mean to you? When you think of it, what comes to mind? And I think a lot of people think of making something, really, really tangible, making something. So if I'm being creative, I'm making something. There's a product, there's something produced, whether it's a dance, a book, a poem, a story, a drawing, a painting, a piece of furniture, but like making something, materially producing something. And fuck yeah. And one of my favorite things about human beings is how creative we are and the things that we make. And then we can sidetrack into some of the things that we create, we make. It's really hard to see all of the possibilities that come from that making. And it's hard to account for anything that could happen from that, right? And so the humans have made some things that have turned out to be rather destructive, right? Even if it wasn't meant to be, right? Like creating something to destroy things is not done as often as movies or like some ideas. I think most creative acts are very well intentioned. And that's not to say as we're making something or we put something out there, you can always review. Right? As new information comes in, you can renew, you can recreate. So I wanted to challenge the idea that you have to make something in order, very, very tangible, in order to be creative. I wanted to share this thing I'm banging around in my head, and I'm sure I'm not the first person to say this or think this or mess with this, but we are in constant creation. We are in constant acts of creativity. It doesn't necessarily, you don't have to think of yourself as a creative person. You are creative. You are creation. You are constantly in process of life and death and rebirth. And that's a natural law. And it pertains to us in many, many different ways and many different levels, right? Some of the ways that we can be really creative that isn't necessarily producing something or making something really tangible is what we do all the time. We are in constant relationship with everything. We have an innate force in us that you can see everywhere. I don't know if it's the same exact thing in a seed, and a seed knows what to do and how to grow. I don't know if it's the same as other forces of creation in nature, but it's certainly similar. We're super powerful. And being innately creative even if you're not an artistic type or something, or you're not good with your hands or any of these things that may or may not be true, you're creating. You're creating yourself all the time. Quite literally, biologically, your cells are dying and new ones are being born all the time. When we stop and think, when we think about how we're thinking, we're being very creative. When we shift our perception, we're being really creative. When we try something new, or we're doing something we've done before, but in a new way, we're being creative. When we're solving problems or in any process that is solution oriented, we're being creative. How are you creative? One of the tangible ways I'm creative, I like to write. Obviously, Meraki Pharmacy is super creative. There's things being made all the time. But I'm focusing on how am I creative in my mind and how I think and how I view myself in the world, how I think about what's possible. Whenever we do that, we're being creative. Oh, we have two very creative people here. Thanks for coming by. Talking about, it's spring and we just had Easter and Passover and spring equinox, and the sun is in Aries, and things are growing, and everyone's talking about rebirth and rejuvenation. These are things we talk about a lot here because, you can't schedule in creative time, really. It happens. It happens when it happens. And looking at all the different ways that we are constantly being creative. We're in some process of creation. And challenging the ideas that you have to be an artist or it has to be super, super tangible. So one thing I thought of when I was thinking about this, right behind where we live, there's a house with a fence and it's on a corner and it's basically an alley between us. And at this house lives a puppy named Mia, Puppy Mia. And Puppy Mia is awesome and totally runs the neighborhood. Is outside all the time, run on the fence. She and Kinga make kissy sounds and run around, and it's really, really great. And she bites my sweater, and it's wonderful. So we were stopping by Puppy Mia's house yesterday on our walk, and I'm standing in the corner, and the dogs are doing their thing, and thankfully, for once, someone was coming up slow through the alley, and it was a dark minivan. In hindsight, they were totally looking for an address or somewhere, and I'm just in Dogville, blissed out, probably a little stoned, not paying much attention. And the van rounds the corner and pulls up in front of Puppy Mia's house. And Puppy Mia's parents aren't outside or anything, it's just Puppy. And this man comes out, and he's in a nice tan, dark brown, chore coat, work coat thing. Hi, Kinga. And he's got an envelope in his hand, a standard mailed package brown envelope in his hand. And he gets out of the van and he puts it on the step. And as he's getting back in his vehicle, Puppy Mia's mom comes out. She's like, "What's up?" He's like, "Don't you know your mail got delivered to my grandma's house on Railroad Ave? Your street don't even start with an R, but it came to us, and so I looked up where your address is to your house, and I thought I'd bring it by." Puppy's mom was like, "For real? That's awesome! Thank you so much. That was super kind. Thanks. Sorry." He was like, "Yeah, it was really weird. I don't know how it got to us, but here it is. There you go. Have a great day." And I watched this and listened to it, and I thought it was fucking lovely. I thought it was awesome, and it's a totally normal thing. But when I thought about that just lovely moment, I thought of many things. One, I love living in a town. It has been a long time since I lived densely and with many, many neighbors and many cars and many streets and many places to walk and parks and people and noises and music and kids riding bikes and parks and people playing sports, and it's lovely. It's lovely. I don't hang out with any of these people. I don't really even say hi, but coexisting among people here has been fucking awesome. But getting to witness this, like, was this a big deal? Like, was this man doing something just outrageously kind or generous? I mean, not really. I mean, to me, it's like, yeah, that's definitely an option, right? Someone else's mail comes to your house. What do? You could, and here's a creative process, right? That could lead to like some cool thing, or it's just the right thing to do, or it's just something. Maybe normally you'd be like, not my mail, not my problem, or like return to sender, it's the post office, or like, or you take a minute and figure out where that address is and take it to them. Like, I just thought that was so beautiful and a great example of a different way that we can be creative. Like, I don't know, it wasn't a huge problem to solve. It also just was a lovely exchange. I love southeastern Pennsylvania. Philadelphia got so much sass and character. It's not nice like that everywhere. Anyway, other ways that I was thinking about on creativity. You know me, you know where I'm going to go. So, closing statement on that is there's so many ways to be creative, and it can involve where you're paying attention, right? Anytime you shift a pattern or you switch it up, you're being creative. You're doing something new, whether you're doing something you've done before or a brand new thing, right? That's an act of creation. Whenever we're paying attention to our body, I've really been trying to pay super, super attention to my body at work and how I'm moving my body, because this is the first season I am reminded of my progression through time and the ages that I am closer to 40 than I've ever been, and I feel it. I feel it in various parts of my body. And so, of course, I treat with Muscle Rub, and I eat food, and I stretch. I eat, like, plants and vegetables and, like, good stuff as much as I possibly can. I get sleep. I have a daily practice of stretching and moving, and all those things help. And Muscle Rub has really been, like, I had a pinched nerve in my back. I was, like, a little worried. Thankfully, we had a 3-day weekend, so I got to rest it. It was making my hand numb. It was crazy. But Muscle Rub really helped. So, anyway. Another example, right? Like, my body is hurt. I hurt myself. Here's an opportunity to shift or recreate a story or a habit, right? Like, I could get really upset and or go down the tunnel of, oh my gosh, what am I going to do if this doesn't get better and it gets worse because I'm at work and I'm constantly moving my body in repetitive motions, and I could, and that I should consider what could happen if my body doesn't heal itself and I don't help it, without being only there, right? Our minds can be such a creative or destructive or both tool. Our minds are kind of wild to think about. I think emotions are crazier. Brain, mind, thought, mental, whatever words you use to think about thinking, how you see, perceive, how you communicate, and how you do that with yourself and in relationship to what's happening in the world and all the people and places and plants and pets and priorities in your life. We can be super, super, super creative in our mind. And it doesn't necessarily have to be creating something that's never existed before. It can be a new way of doing something for us. Like, I hope this is making sense. Creatively destructive to my mind is on my, thank you. Creatively destructive to my mind is on my resume. So this also led me to think about how definitely last year and what is time, all the things that have been happening include a continued opportunity, particularly last year, continues all the time, to think about what's important and to slow the fuck down and downsize, reprioritize, reassess, rethink, challenge a lot of stuff that goes on in here, of course, how we see the world, how we see our country, how we see white terrorism, how we see harm in the world, and how we see our relationship to that also. You know where I stand on the whole love and light thing. I want to talk about this. One thing I definitely learned last year, and it just happened to be last year, I think it was more related to like a natal solar return eclipse. Fuck. You will forever hear me vaguely mention that. Realizing that there was much to be updated in my mind, which meant that things had to go. You'll always hear me consistently say this, especially when it comes to shadow work or internal family systems paradigm and definitely trauma recovery. No part of you needs to go. No aspect of your being is wrong or needs to go or be pruned away. What we do prune, habits, thought systems, tendencies, that shit we can prune. Stories, like narratives, myths, shit that really actually is the harm involved in it is too much. That shit can go. We can't totally create without some level of destruction. And that's not a commentary on human nature. I go by natural laws. There are things coexisting at the same time. Things are created and destroyed in a simultaneous process. Life, death, life, death, life, death. I mean, energy can't be created or destroyed. It simply changes form. There is no away. Like when you clear out rooms, and you're making room, you're clearing out space, something else is going to come in. And we can totally think about plants and how that works, right? My job primarily is maintaining other people's gardens. And there's some people who come out after spring pruning and they're like, holy fuck, you cut everything away. You cut everything down. You killed it. There's where's all the matter? Where's all the material? Where's all the life? Where's all the plant? It's like, no, okay. I know we're going to just talk you off that edge right now because I know what it looks like. All of that stuff had to go. It was draining. It was dead. It was ready to go to the compost pile. It was no longer viable. It wasn't growing. It was never going to grow again. Yeah, and everything right now is happening below the surface. And there's so many layers. The same for us. There's things that need to be pruned. And some of those things we may not want to prune, right? It's comforting. It's something we've always had. It's something we've always done. Our brain makes a parallel familiar to safe. And those things are those are not synonyms. Safe is not familiar. Familiar is not safe. Not necessarily. All magnets are metals. Not all metals are magnets. I know, and I think it is so important to continue to embrace and practice and be with the other side, the shadow and the dark and the death and the terrible and the pain and the suffering, it blows. And it's integral. There is no way. I don't know. I know that we can change the kind of harm and the destruction that we cause each other, for sure. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about like racism and sexism and murder and rape and none of that stuff. I'm talking about the subconscious, hidden, uglier, nastier, dirtier, whatever words, this idea that there are things that we shouldn't own or we shouldn't talk about or we shouldn't acknowledge. And we need to. We need to do all those things. And I think it is super beneficial to kind of step back for a second and look at how everything in the universe and the world works. Nature on earth, cosmic nature. It's not all shiny. It's not all flowers. It's just not. It's just not. I think there's like is it meeting life on life's terms or something, which I am not a master of at all. This is kind of like a new thing. And in a way, to be like, these are the rules of Earth. Like, I don't know why it is the way that it is. I don't know why humans can't get our shit together, but like, this is what we're doing. Decrease the suck and increase the rad. Yes, be super creative and make all the things and play and have so much joy and pay attention and not pay attention. And also, like, there's no life without death. I've been really paying attention to the vultures and spending so much time pruning just has me thinking on these things. I know a lot of folks are tired. I know that, there's still so much uncertainty. Things have, just been really, really, really hard in lots of ways. And we as a collective have been looking at a lot of death and loss and betrayal, suffering. What do we do with it? What do we do with it? How do we show up to it? And again, there are some things that are absolutely unfucking acceptable and non-fucking negotiable. For sure. Human rights. For sure. Being human is so weird. But if we spend too much time wishing it wasn't that way, and I'm notorious for this, I really wish it just wasn't that way. I remember like my first existential crisis when I was like 9 years old, and I was like, this world is savage as fuck, and I'm pretty sure it doesn't have to be, and I don't understand why it is. And I still don't understand why it is, but it is. And right next to all of that stuff is the really kind neighbor who's like, I'm going to bring that mail to the right address. And puppies. Kind of losing my train of thought, but there's duality in all the things. And I guess it is a worthy pursuit to do the dances with all of it in a way that is real for you and that continues to challenge any stories and myths that inhibit that. Because you are so fucking creative and so powerful, and there's no one right way for any of this to look. I think it's important that it's yours. And that it, connects you to things. Those were the thoughts that I wanted to have and share. And, try to get back to a regularly scheduled program for tea times. But work is super challenging. It's hard to predict. So we'll make it happen. We'll find the times. Create the times. Right, Kinga? King is giving me that look like it's time to go back outside. Thank you so much for coming by, and feel free to share or like ask anything when I post it later. or like share any ideas, because that's the best part of this. All right, I'm going to go recreate.